Following program is produced by Project Bait and does not reflect the views of this station.
This is part 2 of the Wells Report on Race, Identity, and DNA for My People. In part 1 of my analysis of race and DNA, I used singer Mariah Carey's appearance on comedian George Lopez's show as a segue into a larger discussion about race, racial identity, and DNA testing. In recent years, documentaries like Henry Louis Gates' African American Lives have made DNA testing a popular mechanism for people to trace their ancestry and learn more about themselves and their origins. Currently, there are at least 24 companies that sell these type of tests, with the cheapest costing a little more than $100 and the most expensive costing up to $900. More than 500,000 people have purchased these tests in search of a glimpse into a past that they assume to be lost. But do these tests really provide the information that they promise? You might be surprised at the answer. Throughout his career at Harvard University, Professor Henry Louis Gates has carved out a reputation as the preeminent scholar on African American history and culture. He is the co-editor of the 2,000-page book Africana, the Encyclopedia of the African and African American Experience. He has authored several books, including 2009's Lincoln on Race and Slavery, and he has hosted and narrated several documentaries, including 1999's Wonders of the African World and the two-part African American Lives of 2006 and 2008. Because of these credentials, it would be understandable that people would trust the expertise of Gates in determining the genetic backgrounds of persons of African descent. But in reality, because of the limitations of DNA testing, these tests should not be taken as 100% accurate. Studies show that these tests are only capable of tracing 2 of a person's 64 great-great-great-great-grandparents, thus omitting the other 62. African Americans have also been given hope that these tests can help determine what part of Africa their ancestors are most likely from. This leads to the second problem. With only a small pool of samples from 6 West African regions, even geneticists who conduct these tests readily admit that accuracy is very limited, and often they must depend on linking someone's DNA with the closest available match that they have in their database. Gates' own test is an example of this. Determined to find an ancestral match in sub-Saharan Africa, Gates took several tests with varying results. One test showed his DNA to be about 50% European, while another test matched his genetic profile with peoples of Northern Europe and another to Northern Africa. Not being able to get a precise match, Gates took the best conclusion that the geneticist could give him. In the first installment of African American Lives, Gates' testing of various famous African Americans only found 2 people, Chris Tucker and Oprah Winfrey, to possess significant Native American ancestry. This led him to conclude that most claims of African Americans that they have Indian in the family are largely myths. The funny thing is that Gates' team of geneticists also tested the DNA of fellow Harvard professor Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot. DNA tests concluded that Lightfoot didn't possess any Native American ancestry, even though the part of Virginia where Lightfoot's ancestors were from has a long history of intermixture between blacks and Indians. The problem with measuring DNA according to some established criteria of corresponding genes is that 2 individuals with similar sets of chromosomes could be people who appear to be completely different in terms of social constructions of race. In simple terms, this means that a pattern of genes that geneticists assume to be, say, Polish, may actually be Native American because the genetic patterns look similar. The bottom line is, some African Americans may be nearly completely African, others may be partially European, and still others may be partially Native American. Currently, there is no DNA test that can prove any of this with 100% accuracy. This is proven by the large number of African Americans who have taken these tests over and over and continuously get differing results. Considering these facts, what is the real value in some groups wishing to classify themselves as biracial or multiracial? If we are to move toward an egalitarian society where race truly doesn't matter, how will adding yet another racial category push us in that direction? Figure this. A recent study found that, on average, African American DNA is about 1/5 European. In a classic example of this inevitable mixture, research has shown that First Lady Michelle Obama also possesses European as well as Native American ancestry. Thus, no matter how you slice it, Michelle Obama and Mariah Carey are both simultaneously black and mixed. That is, if you continue to invest in the idea of biological race. This reminds me of a discussion I had with a young lady a few weeks back who told me that she defined herself as biracial because she thought that defining herself as black would negate the existence of her white mother. Now let me first acknowledge that a person's identity is completely their own choice. But I would ask, if a person already exists, how can another person's socially constructed race deny another person's existence? President Barack Obama freely acknowledges his white mother and family, but identifies himself as black, as does singer Kimberly Locke, who is also biracial.
My mom did me a favor at the time. She said to me, she said, "You're black." She's like, "Your mother is white, your dad is black." She's like, "You are black."
But this is nothing new. Throughout the passing of time, the blending of cultures and so-called races has always been the norm rather than the exception. So although everyone has the right to define themselves in any way they choose, all of this fuss and debate about race and mixed race may have the unintended result of casting miscegenation into the realm of modern-day exoticism rather than its historic regularity. This has been part 2 of the Wells Report on Race, Identity, and DNA for My People.
There are 3 basic necessities every business needs: a business plan, a bookkeeper, and a website. Call Project BAIT for all 3. Call 313-871-3333. That's 313-871-3333.
If you are in business, you should promote your business in the Metro Business Information Guide. For more information, contact Chris Woodard at 645-2282. That's 313-645-2282.